in photography is even worse. We're behind the scenes individuals that don't really get that love at all. So a part of that motivator of how I present myself is like, I got to inspire two sets of generations and even my own generation to know, like, yo, if your kid comes to you and wants to do photography, it's not a bad thing. Like, that's a real job.
Welcome to another episode of Nah, Not All Hood. Today we have for you Cam Kirk, iconic hip-hop photographer and bona fide rep of Atlanta's vibrant creative scene. The business marketing skills Cam solidified at Morehouse College have enabled him to parlay his early days as a content creator and hip-hop photographer to becoming a creative entrepreneur with Cam Kirk Studios. In this episode, we talk about Cam's humble beginnings, the necessity of artists to also be technologists, the responsibility of artistic activism, and even how the programmed fear of AI keeps Black people behind the 8 ball. He provides a great insight as an artist, a businessman, and yes, as a businessman. Enjoy the conversation.
In terms of hip hop, in terms of recording the stories of the hip hop generation, what brought you there?
Well, honestly, brought me there as I was managing an artist, and I just thought about some of our favorite artists and the fact that I couldn't find archival photos of them. And, you know, being a fan of Jeezy and T.I. and Gucci, I couldn't just get online and find like a dope image of them in any capacity. And I also I'm a big like coffee table fan of coffee table books, so I buy a bunch of books and I would go to Barnes and Nobles and I would see these photo books of, you know, the Rolling Stones or Beatles and stuff like that, and I never saw us. Like, where's the one of, you know, my favorite rapper? Where's the Nas photo book? Where's the Jay-Z? And I was like, I want to be somebody that documents that for Atlanta and for this culture out here. So that's what really started it. I just wanted to capture like real life moments and capture these guys as human beings and not just as characters.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's really important because then when people 20, 30 years from now come back and look at the archives, your work will be there.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the hope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the hope.
Like Vanderzee and all those cats doing like Harlem back in the day, right?
Yeah, like Gordon Parks, all of that.
Right.
Like, you know, hopefully, I think hip hop will be respected at a point where you can see it in different museums and places. It's already starting, you know.
Right.
Smithsonian Museum has a hip hop dedicated space, and Jay-Z, what he just did at the Brooklyn Museum. So you're already starting to see it, but hopefully, yeah, some of the work I did will live long like that.
Yeah. There's some real iconic images of people in hip hop.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them must have inspired you. You were talking to me about Biggie Smalls in front of the Twin Towers.
For sure.
And some of the things that actually inspired you in terms of the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm heavily inspired by Chimodu. He's the photographer that captured that classic photo, as well as a lot of Tupac's early work. He actually has a coffee table book dedicated to his work with Tupac. But he's somebody that captured like the essence of hip hop in like the early 90s. So it's like Snoop Dogg in front of like Long Beach signs. It's Biggie in front of the Twin Towers. It's the famous picture of Nas laying on his bed in Queensbridge. So many memories like that and moments like that. But I always felt like he captured like them in like a very raw but vulnerable space, and not just them when they had, you know, all the jewelry on or the flashiness or the, you know, the outfits. He kind of captured a more personal look from them.
Right,
So
it's humanizing.
It's humanizing them. So his perspective and his ability to have that access to them where they let their guards down was something that was heavily inspiring to me, because I had that same relationship with a lot of artists in Atlanta. Like, they would trust me. They would do things around me they wouldn't do around other people. So I just like that, and I like the way that he captured it with a level of taste and respect. But then artists like Jonathan Mannion, well, I call photographers artists, so artists like Jonathan Mannion,
they are.
his work is just incredible because he just took it to a whole nother level, and he captures like every single Jay-Z album cover. Like, how do you even get the ability to do that? Like, from Reasonable Doubt to build a long-standing relationship with an artist that long, then translated that to every Cash Money album cover, to Lil Wayne's album covers, to Eminem album covers, to Ja Rule. Like, his catalog of imagery is just like insane to me. But when I look at his work, I think about the business side of it and how he was able to take this camera and basically document what the images that we think of in like the 90s and 2000s, we think of his work. So he took it to like a more business level to me than what Chimodu did. And I'm just inspired by both of those. And then here in Atlanta, I was super inspired by Motion Family, who actually has an office like around the corner from this. Yeah. And their work and the way that they were capturing hip hop in the 2000s and around my era, but documenting the South and their work of Jeezy, their work of Lil Boosie. Like, it was just so raw to me and dope that I just really fell in love with the way that you can really document a culture, you know, with your camera. And then from there, it was like Zach Wolf. He's another Atlanta native that just has documented a lot of really crazy stuff. So a lot of that stuff really got me into it. But it's crazy because in that whole list, Chimodu's the only black photographer in there.
Wow. So do you feel is part of your drive feeling a certain responsibility?
For sure. Now that I understand the importance of the camera. When I was first doing it, it wasn't that. It was just documenting friends or just creating something cool for the internet. But as I got deeper into it and realized the opportunities and the impact of my work, I've been in Italy and been stopped about work that I've done, like a photo.
Wow.
And it's stretched all the way there. And the meaning that photo has, now that means something to me because this is how they are looking at America or Atlanta. This is their visualization of what it's like there. So once you start to see your work and translate that like that, then you start to think about what
big picture.
Yeah, what the work says. Like, what does this actually? What's in the photo? What's in the work? Is this something I want to represent that artist? And you think about that. So I think that's something that a lot of younger photographers have to understand. Like,
understand impact on like a bigger culture.
Super.
Cultural
How many
impact.
people are looking at the work you're doing and the impact it can have? Like, these are people I was in Milan, Italy, and they were like, man, I've seen this photo so many times. Like, this is what they think of. It was a photo of Gucci Mane. It's like, this is what they think of Gucci Mane as. It's crazy.
What was he doing in that photo? I'm just curious.
It's actually probably my most controversial photo.
Well, we want to hear it.
Which is probably why it made me think like that. Out of all the work I've ever done of Gucci Mane, but a funny story with him, I was actually given access to Gucci Mane through an artist that he was signing at the time, Young Scooter. So I had a relationship with Young Scooter while I was working with him. He brought me in rooms with Gucci Mane. At that time, I was really nervous to be around Gucci Mane because of all of the stuff I've heard, the personality, the, you know, certain things kind of preceded itself. So I was like really nervous about like not being, you know, one on the other on his bad side. So when I was around him, I actually never ever told him to pose for a picture. Like, I never made it clear that I was taking a photo of him. I would really kind of sneak the photos. I was really there to capture somebody else, so then I would just like sneak moments of him. I never put them out. I never really did a lot with it. So a lot of the work that I have with Gucci Mane is very candid. Like, the early stuff is very candid. It's off guard. And it actually developed that style that I was talking about where it's very human. It's very, you know, down to earth. It's like a different perspective. But this one particular image is probably one of my most iconic photos, unfortunately, because it just plays into everything you think of when you think of the menacing side of Gucci Mane. It was like actually on a music video set. He's got a gun in his hand. It's like drugs on the table. There's money everywhere. We're in a trap house. And it's like a BTS shot of that moment. But that became like the legend of Gucci Mane because it's like, it's everything you think about when you think about the menace inside of him. So that photo just like took off like wildfire when I put it out. So that became one that's traveled all around the world and it's in museums now. So it's been that. But it's one of those where I have a love-hate with it because it's like, this isn't the guy I know. Like, when I really got around him, I met the other side. I met the side that the world's kind of seeing now, a family man with his kids, blah, blah, blah. So someone likes to have fun, that's chill. So that just kind of paints the narrative of what he was before. But I like that now he's made a 180 and the people can see like this other side of him because it gives a little contrast to who he is.
So do you think the popularity of that photo comes out of that it perpetuates that stereotype of
100%.
hip hop?
Yeah, I mean, that's hip hop is built off of that.
Right.
But you know what I like about it?
Yeah, the business, yeah.
But you know what I like about it is that you have the power of the camera to create the rest of the pie. So we just saw one little slice.
Yeah.
And now you have many, many photos, and we'll create many, many more that will hopefully strike a balance in terms of what you're saying and what you hope other people see from that one picture, even though it's gotten so much attention.
Yeah, that's the hope. And that's when you talk about responsibility, that's your responsibility is to tell the whole story. You know, as a photographer, you're a journalist in certain ways as well. You're just through imagery. So it's your job to tell the entire narrative of what happened. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's dope that you've gone like sort of beyond just your role as a photographer, but also sort of expanding and opening up to that responsibility to a greater community too.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you got to pass the torch. Once you inspire somebody, you don't just leave them there. Like, you know, like in this day, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. So a lot of people have their own perception of what my life is like or what my career was like. So as I'm meeting young photographers and they think it's one way, I'm realizing like, oh, you're not getting the full picture. Like you're just seeing this.
No pun intended.
You're not seeing the full thing. So it became more important to me that I sat down and said, oh no, it doesn't work like that. Like, you don't just happen like that. Like you gotta do this, or this comes with that, or you got your job is to do this. And like a lot of young photographers will see my career, oh, you travel, you tour, you're with artists all day, it's just must be partying and this and that. You must be making millions of dollars, and it's like, nah. You don't make anything sometimes. And then if you're really good at it, there is no partying, there is none of that. You're working. Like when they're having fun, you're documenting. And if you're not, you won't be in that position for long. So it's a lot of stuff that comes along with it that a lot of young people, you just see it on the internet, you're not seeing the full picture. So that's where mentoring came in. It's like so many people just had a skewed perception of what it was like. And I was like, I got to give you the game. While at the same time maintaining the perception that I know needs to exist, the mystique that needs to exist, because I can't just expose it all to the world, because then people won't respect what I do if they don't understand.
Too much information.
Can't give them too much, but if you know me personally, you get the ability to get too much. You know.
I often talk about my my love-hate relationship with hip hop. I've done it in every album. I've done, a lot of my poetry addresses that. What do you? It's two questions. I'm gonna start with the first one. What do you love about hip hop?
I love that it's probably one of the only things in culture that I feel like was originated with us, and we somehow still have the ability to maximize and make a lot of money off of it. I like the fact that it has changed lives of families, and it's taken people literally from, I've watched it, from people that literally had no money or were homeless to superstardom or fame or money or whatever can comes with it. Now, I'm not a big fan of what happens or what all the steps they have to do to get there or what things come with it. But in terms of like a vessel to create potentially generational wealth for Black and brown people who come from poverty, it's one of the only forms we have, unfortunately, that can happen like this. So for that, I respect it. I respect how it can change people's lives and how it's changed my life and other people around me. So those are some of the things. I like that it's creativity. I like that it's self-expression. I like that it's radical at times. I like that it's our way of combating the system at times when done the right way. So I think all of those things are the special parts of hip hop. I love its influence. Through hip hop, I've landed at shoots in Milan, Italy, and all across the world. I love where it can take me. So from there, I love it.
Yeah, the opportunities it creates is kind of dope.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, and I know you included too, here at this table, know the responsibility too of a parent to make sure that their child is involved in the arts in some way, because the school systems, the dollars are cutting back the budgets. You're not really getting that. So what you're doing out in the community, you're really supplementing what they should be getting in school. And that's actually how it came into your lap too with your father.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of things that I think the schools need to change, just the way that what's important and things of that nature. But I think what we do, I mean, the thirst for knowledge when people will actually find their passion is really cool. That's why college is kind of cool, because you kind of have somewhat of an idea of what you want to do, and you can kind of try to get really specific into it. But there's like another layer of it even after college where you really find out what you want to do, and you really have this thirst of like, I want to learn more about it. And that's like what we do at our studios. Like those that have really felt like, wow, that bug is in photography or content creation, then we can kind of be like that vessel where you don't necessarily have to go back to school, but we can kind of walk you through the steps on how to actually learn what you need to learn to be best at it for sure.
Yeah.
So your Morehouse background set you up for all this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But when you think about me, you think about how I was brought up, like born and raised in PG County, Maryland.
Oh, you
so that's like
Okay.
Atlanta, another version of Atlanta when you talk about black wealth, black success. So I grew up knowing black people can be successful in multiple different ways, not just rap or basketball, right?
Right.
So then when I moved to Atlanta, it's another mecca of that. So even when you ask that question, I know where you're going because I'm with you. You know what I mean? I'm both sides of it.
Right.
Like I play a part in this way and I play a part in this way. And that's why it's important. Like whatever I make or do within hip hop, there's another philanthropic side of it. Like
Right.
we are impacting the world through hip hop, not just making money to flash on the gram, So it's a different world of it. So I feel like I'm a well-rounded perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like I've spent time in Atlanta and some of the worst places of Atlanta, places you'll never want to go around some of these individuals. I know exactly who they are, how they think, but I've always been able to maintain who I am and what I believe in and what I stand for, and people know that about me. But it definitely comes with both sides. Like, I don't just walk around listening to all of the stuff that's on the radio.
Right.
It doesn't mean something to me. Like, it hits my spirit the same way. Like,
Yeah.
I went to Morehouse. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's a different vibe. Like, for sure.
I feel like it's kind of similar to it's a little stretch, right? But to you sort of maintaining your integrity as an actor and the balance in your role choice and things of that nature. You know what I mean? Like, you still hip hop and you still a black man, but you ain't playing that role that's gonna have you shucking and jiving and drug dealer number 3.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've been. It's interesting because we talk about artistic activism, right? That was one of the things we talked about when we were coming up with the topic for the show, and so people constantly talk about their appreciation for the roles that I've portrayed throughout my career, but the thing that people don't see. So that's as we talk about, that's one aspect of artistic activism.
Yep.
The part that people don't see or don't know about is all of the roles that I've turned down. That would make my bank account very different, from what it is, and it's like that's another level for me of artistic activism.
Right. Saying no.
Yeah.
Because sometimes not always about what you do. Sometimes it's about what you don't
What you don't do. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. What's your when you think of art? Well, I guess it's really for the table.
Yeah.
In terms of what everybody thinks about artistic activism, in terms of our walk in life and how we participate in that artistic activism, creative activism. Especially being a journalist, a professor, a lawyer,
mentor.
A lot of it is, like you said, passing the baton and making sure that the next generation gets your experiences so that they can do more of the same. A lot of it is just being aware, because you were made aware through your own experiences, through the things that your father taught you. He introduced the camera to you, and I remember growing up, and we all sang growing up, and my father really tried to and my mother tried to get me to go to singing lessons to try to get me to understand that this is an artistic form that represents not just music, but in terms of the Negro spirituals and blues and jazz and everything that we would hear, that really was all a part of preserving history, and they wanted that to continue. And it was a tussle because, even Whitney Houston or Aretha Franklin, they had to practice, and they had to teach me that I had to practice because I was really fighting against that. But you have to jump into it, and you have to practice, and you have to really getting into knowing your material if you want to have any effect on anybody. Most of the things that I do, even inside, many people know I have a hair care company. It always was married, the events that I did, in some artistic space, with a play or with a photographic exhibit about hair, because art is very important. And at a time where we are editing history and re-editing history as we speak, and politicians and librarians are all involved in the process, to get it documented 50 years from now, no one can refute it. And that's really important to understand, I think probably in all of our spaces, to make sure that we get it down on paper. Today I went down to the Martin Luther King Jr. Center, as well as where he grew up, and then I went to their store, and the store was mostly books, full of documentation of Nat Turner and Zora Neale Hurston and Claude McKay and the poems by Langston Hughes. And all of that is just really important so that you pass the baton to the next person so that they can make sure that they know the story. Because people who are out there, as we know in the headlines, not to make this political, they want it edited out. They want to change the history. And I think that that's the real importance that I think about whenever I am following art or I am creating art in that art space.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think with any level of success in whatever industry you're in, there's a responsibility that comes with it. And I think for me, as a creator and as someone that creates imagery, I mean, that's a huge level of responsibility that has to come and just like control and knowing what you're doing, because you can paint something completely different. And we see that, as you say, in the political space, like an interview can be misread 10 different ways. A photo can be misconstrued 10 different ways. So you have to think about that when you put in work out as a photographer. And like that's some of like the early stuff that I think about. Like what do you want to show of this person that you're capturing? And what's the point of it? What's the purpose? How's it going to make somebody feel? So I think all of those things are like artistic responsibility. And even you mentioned like turning down jobs. Like I've had to do that a number of times. Like that just don't make sense for me, or it doesn't work for me.
What would make sense for you in terms of photography?
For me right now, it changes, it evolves, right? So I would say right now, I'm at a weird place, I would say, where I probably pick up my camera 10 times a year now. So it's very limited things that make sense to me. So it's really now it's about impact. So when I do any type of work, I'm really just clocking impact. Like what is this work gonna do to inspire the next generation or the next person, or push whatever I'm doing to another level to give me a bigger platform to do what I'm doing in a community with my studio and other things that are really important to me. So I take a job that's got to be based off impact. So if I do a job now, it's usually got to be like a big brand like Nike. And then I like to collab it with culture. So if Nike, like for instance, I did Megan Thee Stallion's graduation photos for Nike. When she graduated college. So that's a big cultural moment with Megan. And it's also a big moment because it's Nike. It's like a Nike shoot with Megan. And then you do those two together, and now
and
you
it's
have
education.
It's all types of things, inspiring generation that know that these things exist. And like that is a win-win-win for me. It's like, it's dope. You know what I mean? It's highlighting a special moment and not just her on stage doing something else, right? It's a different vibe to it. So those things mean a lot. I was able to document like Lil Baby for the World Cup with Budweiser. It's like, there wasn't a lot of philanthropy in it, but it's also like, wow, look how big hip hop in Atlanta specifically can take you. Like here's Lil Baby making the anthem for Budweiser's World Cup project. It's going to be seen all over the world. Wow. And it's like, that's impact to me. Like I got to do that shoot. That's a big one. You got to do that. Or just recently I did Jermaine Dupri's first ever Vibe magazine cover. That's history. Like, how has he never done a Vibe magazine cover?
Like, that's just hitting me.
That's wow. Like, he's an R&B magazine. How has Jermaine Dupri never been on it? But just recently, I did his first ever Vibe magazine cover. So, like, that to me would get me out of bed. That's history. That's something that lasts forever. It's a stamp in his career and the legacy of who he is. That means something. I did Jeezy's autobiography book, the book cover for his autobiography, Adversity for Sale. That's big. That's iconic. That's impact. You know what I mean? And none of these are like the $100,000 photo shoots. Like the Megan one was decent. But like, some of these aren't that big. Like, you know, they're just like cool moments. Like, and it's like those make sense to me. Like I want to do those. You know, so that is something that gets me moving. For real.
We were in New York City, And there was one evening, Malcolm, you went to the interview. We were just all parted ways. And I was trying to go to the Museum of Modern Art before it closed because there's this picture called Belizaire and the Frey family, I believe. Lane, check me out on that. But what it is a picture of is it's 3 white siblings back during the time of slavery and a slave leaning on a tree, looking more humanized and I don't know what some people might say, I know slightly classier than the way that they have, they meaning painters, white painters especially, have showed Black slaves with the eyes bugging out and everybody's super black and me somewhere on the side, and he's leaning on the tree and he's kind of in the picture and they're sitting down and he's dressed in something very white and prettier than what you would see for someone during that time, especially someone painting it.
He was an adult or a kid like the rest of them?
14 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason that they know this is because at one point, somebody just wiped him out. They just covered him up. So this painting lived in, somebody's basement for a while, somebody's attic. It stayed with inside the family. And then when an art enthusiast came across it, they decided, wait a minute, we need to uncover that up. We see that something's covered. So they went through the process of having the whole piece of artwork restored.
Wow.
And they took it off, right? Took the paint. I mean, that's a process because for decades it's sitting there covered, uncovered it, and here you see this enslaved person, not a slave, right? Because that's not how he came over here. Enslaved person that was seemingly more a part of a family and portrayed in a different way. And this is really one of the first of its kind that shows those kind of humanistic values, even though we know it was an inhumane period. MoMA ended up buying it for a disclosed price. And so when I left you that day, I was like, y'all, I'm going up to MoMA. I just wanted to see, because as you said, you can have a piece of artwork, but then how does it fall on the person that actually takes it in? And not just take it in from, I see that picture of Belizaire and the Frey children, to see it in person. Well, it was a long line. I didn't get in that day, but it's they bought it as part of their permanent collection. Wow. But yeah, and they also have an exhibit about Harlem. I mean, the lines were just so long. Again, I wasn't able to get in. Of course, I will eventually see it. But there's a lot of enthusiasm around art, preserving art, whether it's pictures, whether it's Afrofuturism, whether it's jazz, there's so many art forms that we are a part of that need to be restored. And so I really see that as part of your journey. And obviously you do too.
Yeah, it's important to me.
So I think that
Was this it?
That's the picture. Yeah, so that's the picture. So the whole thing you see on the right-hand side, gone.
Like
so
from here up.
Yeah, everything. So they restored it, and not only did they restore the picture, but they also revived the color. And there he is, right? So when we think of people being enslaved, I mean, obviously, what they know about him now, it's got roots in Louisiana. He's 14 years old. All of the children predeceased him, and that's all they know about it. They don't know much else. But they do know that the way he is depicted is very, very different than that time period of how he was, how other white artists were depicting slaves during that time.
It's interesting, just the literally whitewashing him out of
Literally,
the history.
Yes. Just covered him out.
Just covered him up. Right? That's crazy.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to take the time to go back and erase a lot.
Ooh. Re-educate ourselves. Re-educate others.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And then, the nuance between sort of arts activism and art that inspires or influences culture in a positive manner, right? So when I think about my role as in arts activism or in that sort of frame, I'm an arts administrator. Like, I'm behind the scenes, dude. I don't want to be all vulnerable and acting and crying and emotive. I don't want to be reading my words to people and poet. I don't want to be taking pictures because I don't know how to do it and the shit looks crazy. I'm the cat that's going to be behind the scenes, that's going to be trying to support people that are doing things that are aligned with activism.
So what is that when you say, so what does the art administrator look like? Like, what is that?
It's the
What does that
business
entail?
of supporting artists. All the business stuff, like behind the scenes, be
Like
it
helping them, helping artists get seen, get placed, get.
it can be from helping artists get seen and placed, be helping artists go through a creative process, understanding what their creative process is, right? Understanding that their role as artists is to create great art. That's their role. My role as an arts administrator or support is to find a place where that art is seen valuable, right?
Got it.
And also sort of challenging myself personally to do things like this because, originally we thought this was going to be a podcast that was just audio, where I didn't have to sit here in front of people and talk, like, we can call, let's call Cam, click, click, right? But challenge ourselves to make sure that we do the things that are pushing the culture, and supporting the principles and ideologies that we want to support.
And
That's
there's
right.
the picture without the that was the
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, that was the edited version. So you can see at the top right, something was there, and that's what got people thinking about what was there.
I love the fact that they were actually interested.
Yeah, and finally interested. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it was decades before that happened. I'm covering my mic. I'm sorry, sir. But yeah, so yeah.
Movie Michael.
And I also think that one of the interesting things is that when we talk about the arts can be expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So if you don't have somebody supporting you in that process, or sometimes somebody in his position will say, we have money for you, or here's a grant, but
You
if
giving out grants, bro?
I mean, but there was a time, in the right position,
Look,
But
yeah. So the fact that you even had a camera, that is not inexpensive. And so we're going back. You don't have to say your age, but take away some years. Not cheap to be a photographer, even today.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges that most creators have is being able to remain creators. Like even with our studio, like when we talk about our challenges or we talk about our competition, I tell my staff and my employees all the time, it's not other studio spaces. Our biggest competition is how many of our photographers that utilize our space, utilize our resources, can remain photographers full time or have to go get a job.
Wow.
right.
Or trade their camera in to pay rent. That's literally our biggest competition. Like we literally watch clients that were active. They're
Doing their
once a
thing.
week, and then next time you see them, they're like, oh yeah, I don't shoot no more. I work at corporate somewhere, and it'd be like, I mean, good for you, but dang, like we just lost another member of the community.
Yeah.
So that it being expensive, and especially where the game is at right now with photography, it's the budgets are drying up. The value of it is decreasing because we all can pull out our phones and take the same or similar photos. So most people would assume imagery is being consumed so much that you just overlook photos. You see thousands of photos a day. You didn't used to see that.
Right.
It's not normal for you to just be consuming thousands of pieces of art daily like we do now, right?
Right.
So the value of a photo, holding a physical, photo in your hand meant something to you. It hit your spirit a certain type of way.
It was tangible. It was
Tangible. You go to your grandmother's house and she got the family
Photo
photos
albums.
all over. That meant something.
Man, and the
Yeah.
smell like it was.
You could see it, you could pick it up and XYZ. And now it's on a digital frame or something that you can give to your grandmother and just import photos all day.
Man.
It just changes. Everything is so the value of it is decreasing, while at the same time more and more people are getting into it because after COVID, a lot of people spent that time away from their corporate jobs, working whether remote or unemployed. They started picking up creative hobbies or ways to express themselves. They were in their house. They didn't know what else to do. So you got a surge of people like, oh, wow, I like photography and now I want to get into it, which is it's a blessing. It's great. But now they're trying to get in a market that's decreasing. at the moment right now.
And the technology improving and getting better and better. So
You don't have to be as
you
good.
might be an amateur, like extra amateur.
right.
You might not be a good photographer,
Yeah.
but you can have a good quality picture.
Super.
And a good filter.
Super. And if you popular, or you got
Right.
other whatever, then you get a leg up and an advantage. And then especially when you think about like us, like black photographers, there are not a lot of us that also have the access to actually monetize their work in like the gallery space or in
That's a
like
whole nother
the art,
game.
the real art form of it.
Right.
So where a lot of black photographers are stuck being like service providers. They just get hired to shoot.
Right.
They're not really able to create and express themselves and then make money off of their expression. So that also causes another level of friction when you think about photographers. Like all of my work, all the stuff I've been able to accomplish as a photographer, I've never been endorsed by a camera company. I've never been, represented in an art gallery space. No one's reached out to me and be like, man, this work is incredible. We would love to hold your archivals, and never.
Right.
You know what I mean? Never been really, really welcomed into that space. That many photographers in other races are able to sell artwork for $5,000, $10,000. They're able to get their work licensed and XYZ. So a lot of those opportunities are not there already. And then it's slowing down where, if you're doing a photo shoot for a local artist or even a local just individual, their birthday shoot, they're not trying to spend more than $200.
So
Like they're not. Like they're just a norm. They don't think the price should be that much.
Right.
They can go and do it themselves. So
Right.
how many shoots do you got to do at $200 to pay back that $5,000 camera and everything else that comes with it?
Right.
It's challenging out here, for sure.
Do you feel like the role of the sort of archival photographer being different from like those that are doing like the Benji Reeds, who are doing like these creative Afrofuturistic pieces? How much of a difference does that make?
I mean, there's a big difference, I feel, in just the different paths you can go through with photography. Whether you're being extra creative or you're being photojournalistic, like the guy that took that photo of Trump when he got shot, he's gonna make a lot of money. Like, that was one of them ones, right? Like that was crazy.
Lightning in the bottle.
So if you catch that one, that's like a life-changing image that he'll have. So in the path that he's probably in,
If he does the business on it.
if his business is correct, which I assume, I guess I want to assume, if he has all that, he'll make a ton of money just off the licensing and all the stuff that comes with that image. Whereas some other photographers that are just creative, and especially if you're being creative in black spaces, there are a lot of art collectors that don't put black faces on their wall. There's a lot of there are layers to it. Like they don't want that. You know what I mean? Especially even in my world when it's hip hop. Like even I don't be wanting some of these rappers on my wall. Like, when I come home, I'm like, I want to see your face, bro. Like I would think about that. So I'll be a little like, I don't want to walk in my house and see you. But so that limits like what you shoot sometimes can limit the actual reach and the actual ability to monetize it. You know what I mean? Versus something that could be abstract or something iconic or monumental as a moment in time, a historic moment. So all of those things can play a part. But right now, when you really think about licensing of an image, back in the day, there were books being printed, there were magazines being printed.
Right.
Like what is being really printed, like in the outlets, to make someone want to pay for your work. You know what I mean? So it just changes.
I think the thing about artistry and really in all of the arts, and I talk about this a lot, I think COVID, as messed up as COVID was, as a pandemic, it was a silver lining for people who knew how to pivot.
Oh, yeah.
And I think where we are now in the arts, where there's film, television, music, photography, visual arts, that we have dancer, actor, whatever that art is, we all have to figure out what our individual pivots are, because no one's making the kind of money they were making. Right. With music, there was a time where I could go do a live gig really not make much money once I pay the band and everybody else. But I can
sell
do,
those CDs.
man, I do a 90-minute gig and spend 2 hours afterwards selling CDs.
Wow.
Sitting there, as long as I'm signing CDs and taking pictures.
Yeah.
So that's 2 hours of work, but that's income. I can't even give a CD away around now because there's nobody has anything to play it on.
Yeah.
And now with streaming, everybody's getting fucked on streaming, right? So we all have to figure out, it's a beautiful time to be an artist because you don't necessarily have to have a middleman. But I say the only reason to be an artist now is because you love the art and you have something to say. But we also have to figure out what that pivot is, so our livelihoods are no longer dependent upon just this one thing. Because as technology gets even better, it's going to be much easier to look like you're a pro photographer.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
With music, it's you don't
even have to do the music anymore. They can your song. I can go into AI and be like, I want Malcolm Jamal Warner to do a trap song.
That's right. There's that.
Yeah.
And
you can do the whole album on your iPhone.
Yep.
Right. So there's all of that. So I think so many people get into certain art, certain field because they have in their mind the end game of getting rich and famous off of this. Whereas now it's like, no, if you're doing it, you got to do it for the art of it and figure out what it's like before the end result used to be the product.
Yeah.
Right.
Now the product has to be the promotional tool
marketing,
for whatever your bigger thing is.
I think if you're an artist in this day and age, you also have to look at yourself as someone that works in technology and a technologist. You have to understand that you are in that industry now.
Right.
Because your work is being distributed through the vessels of technology. So when you understand that, then you have to be paying attention to the trends of technology and how these things are going to impact your work. So you should have saw AI, and if you don't see AI right now, you got to see how AI is going to impact podcasting, photography, how it's replacing video editing. All these things are already existing. So if you're only focusing on the trends and what you think is your industry, the art, so what are artists painting or what are photographers doing, you're missing out on the fact that you're a dual artist. You're in technology as well. So for me, I'm looking at AI. I'm looking at all the new ChatGPT updates and how soon and how quickly eventually is this going to be this. And then it's going to be like, wow.
And it actually makes you better at your game because you have to keep up because
you gotta utilize it.
Yeah, I remember, editing, being in the news, and it used to be, that used to be just left for people who actually studied it. Now your 80-year-old Aunt Jackie in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, she's editing too.
Yeah.
Because it's just
no, she's not.
She's just that.
She's taking the thing, she's dropping it in.
You know what I
One
mean?
button
One button, yeah. But I mean, just that
And it
whole
does it for
process.
you.
I mean, whatever the editing is, you're dropping in pictures. It puts it all in throws the music. It's easy, but you're right. It does make you a better artist because you have to rise above the equal playing field that technology has created.
Yeah, and you have to understand, we're at a renaissance right now. This is the same era I feel like we were at when the internet was first created. And there were people that were old school, making money pre-internet, that never made the transition. They were just stubborn and never understood the importance of it. And then you have people like Mark Cuban who made billions off of the beginning of the internet, right?
Right.
And I feel like with AI, we're at the same
moment.
And there are people that
change.
Yeah, and I think it's not to get too racial, but it is things that happen where I think they try to scare us from looking into it. So when a lot of the stuff that I see on the internet,
okay to be racial. It's okay. We're a black podcast. It's all right.
The stuff that's presented.
I ain't trying to mess up your money though.
The stuff that's presented to us is like the fear of AI. Man, they can clone your voice. Man, what if they call your daughter and tell her you're outside? What if they do all these things? And that's what's starting to circulate in the black community, man. I ain't messing with that, man. They listen and they can do this. And there's nobody thinking about, well, if I could do that, what is the positive ways that I could use that to expedite my days or make me more efficient? Things of that nature. They're thinking
Keep
about
you safe.
that.
They're thinking
They
about
already know the full picture. They know the negative, but they know the positives outweigh the negatives.
They know the long game.
But they're only telling us the negative. So you're getting on the internet seeing stuff go trending of how AI is manipulating Drake's voice. And it's like they're entertaining you with BS. You know what I mean?
Right.
While you're missing the fact that people are making billions of dollars now on AI. The NVIDIA stock is going ridiculous right now off of all the stuff that it's doing for AI. We're just asleep. Like we're literally asleep on it because we're being fed. Oh man, this could be fake. This could be this.
That algorithm will get you.
Could be that. Yeah, the algorithm. And now it's like, so now I look at myself more like, nah, embrace technology. It's not going nowhere. It's like
not. It's going to continue to evolve.
Have you, in your studies of AI, have you yet found a way to make it work for you in terms of what you do?
Super. We teach classes on AI in my studio because I just felt like I had to sit people down and understand what resources you have. Like the young generation that's grew up with the internet and Google, like still don't even know how to use Google and internet. Like you still don't they still, you can ask them a question, they still tell you, I don't know, which I don't understand.
Right.
Like it's like,
look in your hand.
look in your
It's
hand.
right there.
This isn't school. Like this isn't a test. Like it's no cheating. Like if I ask you something, just
Google.
Google, 2 seconds, boom. Now they're making it even faster with ChatGPT. Literally,
Yeah, you have the whole paper on it.
It's gonna write it for you in your language and however you do it. So it really hit me when I was when I got on it, and then I went back and told my staff about it, and then maybe like a week later, you know, I told them about it, and I see they're not really applying it, and I had to come up with this concept for a way to collaborate with this record label, and we were doing like a brand partnership, and it was like, how can a photographer and this label collaborate? And I was like stuck. I was having a brain fart. I was like, I don't know. And I had my team. I said two of my employees down. I said, yo, we got to come up with this way to collaborate with this label. You guys know about the label. You know about me. What do you think we can do? And then once I told them, I watched them, and in the middle of them saying that, I took the exact language I said to them, went to ChatGPT, typed it in. Said, give me 20 ideas. So as they're and they gave me 20 ideas in less than less than a minute.
Yeah.
And I waited for them to finally tell me the answer. What if we did a T-shirt collab? I looked on the list, T-shirt collab. I said, what if we did that? And it's like everything they said was there.
Right.
But then the one that I chose was there also. Let's do a mini documentary that tells the connection between my story, their story, and how we've been working together for 10 plus years behind the scenes. And then the idea was right there on ChatGPT. Then I
just like that.
Just like that. Then I just went and fleshed it out more. Tell me more about the mini doc. How would that work? Jeez. Then it went boom.
Right.
Wrote me a script. Wrote me if we wanted it in 3 minutes, what are the parts of my story and their story that might be important? You just keep hammering it down.
Drilling
and
down.
then you're there.
Drilling down.
And then I had to literally use that as a teaching moment for my team. I said, yo, this isn't high
cheating.
school. It's not cheating.
Yeah.
Use these things.
Use it.
I said, now imagine if when I gave you that, you said, Cam, you said, all right, bet, give me 1 second, let me think. And you were this. And you gave me the 20 ideas. I'd have been like, you a genius or something? Like, how you know that?
Right.
I'm like, wow. Like, you'd have stood out way more than So it's like they don't even know how to use their resources. So I taught a workshop at my studio, and I showed my community just like the power of ChatGPT. And like, if you just have a business idea, anything, it will write you a full-fledged business plan. You can tell it to write it in SBA format that is eligible for you to submit for a loan, a business loan. It will format it in SBA format and give you everything you need to go and do whatever. Even if you're just storing ideas, like if you thought about opening a restaurant, you can go to ChatGPT and use it as your business advisor. It will walk you through everything you need to open a restaurant. It'll give you names for your restaurant, menu ideas, recipe ideas, and you could just store it, even if it's not ready for it yet. Like, I'm going to just put that over there.
Keep it as an idea.
That's an idea. Maybe.
But you're using the AI to your advantage, jumping into it.
It can play whatever role you want. But a lot of people are just hearing about the fear or scared, or they use it. I'm like, man, use that as a second brain, and then you add your sauce on it, right? You just add your sauce on. You tweak it. You give it information. But now you can feed it information. So my ChatGPT knows my bio. It knows everything about it. It knows it's me talking to it.
Right.
So when I ask it anything, it's going to give it in the format of me and what they know about my story. So I can use it for photo shoots, script ideas, business marketing plans, names of companies. I just launched a camera company called Cord. The name came from ChatGPT. I could just ask it, give me 100 names, and you can just keep going.
Right.
Give me 1,000 names, and I'm gonna find one that I think it makes sense, and then you hammer down on one you like. So I think that, like I said, I just look at myself as a technologist because it's not going nowhere.
You mentioned it being a renaissance, and then I thought about the Harlem Renaissance, and I thought about the Black Arts Movement.
Yeah.
I thought about, how Langston Hughes, he reached out to Miri Baraka. They were alive at one point together. And I'm wondering, if you're thinking about it in a Renaissance way, what is there a collaborative, or should there be something else going on? Photography is a very, you're in solitude a lot.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Renaissance and kind of jumping in this, what is probably a movement, it's going to be looked at it from years from now. And how do you capitalize on that by more of a collective?
Yeah.
Because people in Harlem Renaissance, they all knew each other. They went up to Harlem, and that's where they all landed. And you have a lot of people landing here in Atlanta.
Yeah. I mean, I think through my studio, that's the important.
There we go. Get that advertisement out.
My studio is a
What's the name of the
community
studio?
space. Cam Kirk Studios.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, it's an incubator like that. So that was my pivot. As you mentioned, you got to pivot sometimes. When I started to see the work that I was doing slow down, it was like, let me open up a studio. And now I get a little piece of everybody's shoot in Atlanta. Because if you're using my studio space, I make money off every shoot that you do.
Right.
So it's like a similar way to do that. But then now I can build community within that space.
Right.
I can learn from other people. I can build with other people. I can collaborate with other people all within my space. So it took, like you said, a solo art form and made it bigger. And now I love it. In my community, you'll see multiple members of my community collaborating together. This person's really good at photo lighting. I'll see them on set with another photographer handling their lighting. Or they're handling, posing for them. Like they come in and they creative direct, and you see a lot more collaboration. And I'm not saying it all started from my space, but definitely in Atlanta, that's a big part of it. Because you're meeting other people, and that community starts to stick together. They ask each other what you're charging, how are you doing this, how do you do that, what camera are you using, what gets the best this. I see them trade cameras amongst each other, like, let me use your camera for a week, you use mine. So it definitely starts community, and that starts to build, and that starts to compound the work of photographers. Because when I can't do a job, I put other people on jobs. Like, I can't do it, I've double booked. You go take this job,
right?
And you build on it, and you make it a movie.
You kind of liken it to like a record label in some ways, in terms of how you operate the business.
Yep. So I started a production company, and we run that like a record label. And it's the same. It's like a marketing thing, really, because I come from music industry. Like, that's where most people know my work, is the work I do in music. So I've obviously watched, Gucci Mane start a label. I watched Future start a label. I watched all these artists blow up, and then how they compound their success is just starting a label, and you just build someone else up, and you get a piece of them, and you build someone else up. It's like the same concept. So when I was getting my success in photography, I'm like, one, you got to be really aware that I have a specific style. It's an art form. I have a specific art form. Everybody don't want my art form.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I only can make a certain amount of money because it's a niche, right? So if you want this style of photography, you call Cam. But if you want something super abstract and dynamic in a different way, there's another form of money out there, revenue, that I can't get. But if I signed someone and gave them the basic principles to set themselves up, now their art form can make money in ways that I can't. So that's where the label part started. It's just like signing people to my label, and then when we go out to clients, we got everything you need. Like, what style do you want? You want this style? I can do it. You want this style? I can do it. You want a female photographer to relate to a female artist? We got them. Like, what do you want? Like, we got all types of stuff like that. So that's allowed my business to, I probably, through my production company, probably at least make 5 times more money annually than what I can make myself.
Because
and that
of the way you
can
have
grow
it
a
set
lot,
up.
and that can grow a lot more. And I'm everywhere at the same time.
Right.
Like, I'm in Atlanta while, we had a shoot in L.A. 2 days ago. And the same day we had a shoot in L.A., we had one in New York. I was in Atlanta at the grand opening of my studio. It's like we everywhere at the same time. So,
And this is a question for the table. In terms of, what do you guys think about the importance of arts in Black family?
We're talking creativity.
Creativity. So for me, I started acting because my mother was looking for things for me to do outside of just going to school and coming home and hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
Right. So she was always, there was basketball. And then
basketball.
Shut up, man. No, I'll tell you what's funny. I was 6 or 7 years old. I told my parents this is before I had ever acted or anything. I told my parents I was going to either be a famous actor, a famous poet, or a famous basketball player.
Wow.
So no, the basketball didn't work out.
You can play a basketball player now.
I could play. Yeah,
That's right. There you go.
I can act like I'm
Can he? I'm about saying you could be famous for that.
Even when I was playing,
I heard Calming a ball.
Okay. I can't refute that. I don't know that.
Can you ball? That's what the public
No,
wants to
I
know.
can act like I can ball.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, I was asking if you can ball.
No. I make no pretense.
Okay,
but that's right. Look, I got 2 out of 3. I'm
Okay.
good.
All right.
But even as a kid, when I was on the court, I looked good.
Acting it out? Is that what I'm getting?
I was in it. But if I shot the ball, you just needed to look the other way.
Yeah.
Right? Like I even looked good shooting the ball. It wouldn't go in. But anyway, but they were all activities my mother
That's why he was never
they were all activities
celebrity basketball games
to keep me out of trouble, basically.
Yeah.
So I think about obviously what that turned into, and I honestly believe that we are all creative beings. And there is there's a well of creativity that's available to all of us. But everyone cannot necessarily access that well of creativity because of, life circumstances, too busy trying to pay the bills and make life work, being young and not being encouraged to tap into that creativity.
Yeah.
So the older I get, the more I think about, the importance, and I guess that's why I'm asking the table.
Yeah.
Your take on the importance of introducing arts to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Super. I mean, did your parents supported those ideas from the young age?
Yeah. I think my mother. Even my writing as a young kid, my mother was very encouraging and very supportive. And I think that's one of the reasons why I kept writing, because of that support. My dad was always, making me read books. He was always giving me books on poetry. I remember being in 5th grade. My favorite book was Poems on the Life and Death of Malcolm X. And I remember going to school, and I'd had the book on my desk, and kids would, see the book and be like, "Oh, someone wrote a book about you." Because these kids, they knew who, right? They
knew Malcolm.
They knew Dr. King, but they didn't know Malcolm X.
But they knew you as Malcolm.
Yeah. So I was fortunate in that both of my parents. My father was instilling in me creativity, arts, writing. And my mother was encouraging and supportive of that writing. So that's what really having both of those influences and having that support really obviously proved me well.
Yeah. Well, that's something that definitely, and well, you know about this because you know me, but my father sang and my mother played the piano, and they were both educators outside of that. But it was definitely something that we were always in the midst of. Went home to clean out some closets. The clarinet, the violin, we've got pianos in the house. Literally, if I sing, someone will make that harmony. Yeah. And if I hear somebody singing, I'm coming in with the alto, just in the middle of the house, because we're just a singing household that's full of entertainment. And if you really look at the numbers, if you want to really get, okay, let's go into the school system, young people who get into the arts, they are much more successful. It's a collaborative environment. Their grades get better. They have more confidence. So all of the numbers literally add up. We were in the city, and so our associate producer, Troy, he said, "Look, I'm taking my kids to see The Wiz," which I had seen that week before. And I was so excited that I didn't know his kids, still don't know them. But I was so excited that they were going to see The Wiz. And then you went to see The Wiz, and they were all but that was because I try to get to Broadway once a month. Because when we were growing up, that's what we did. We went to Broadway, and it didn't always have to be a singing Broadway type of a play. Drama, off Broadway, but just being immersed in the arts, a very huge deal. That changed all of our outlooks, meaning me, I have 2 sisters. My sister works in the music publishing industry. Okay. She's an attorney and she does licensing and intellectual property and all of that. And so it's music all the way. My other sister, she's an actress out in LA. I'm definitely in the creative space doing journalism and editing and shooting and writing and putting on plays and all of these things. It is very, very important. Not just to, be the activist, and that's the amazing part of it, but because it builds you up as a human being. And one of the things I love about being in the art space is that you can get in an arena where you can bring all different races who will want to come see that one picture that you did, and now you're in Milan, and everybody, even though you don't speak the language, I don't know, maybe you do speak Italian, but you can communicate through that. Through the work, and everybody understands that. And when you're in an audience, maybe someone might not even understand the language that well, but you're all laughing at the same places. You all understand kind of what happens, for example, from the stage to you. And the translation is great because you can learn and share a lot in the art space that you can't in other arenas. We're definitely more liberal, which is why in a lot of court cases that we hear, artists almost inevitably wins, because you don't want to go down the lane of censoring somebody, because that is a bad precedent and art will go away.
Right. So for me, the influence of art was a little different. Like, it was just having music in the house. Sometimes that was just the radio. Sometimes it was my dad's record collection. And me, sneaking to hear that, oh, what is this? Oh, Ohio Players. Because,
I love that. This album cover is great. Let me take this back to my bedroom.
Let me take it to school.
I'm just saying, it caught my eye, so I listened to it. Right? Maybe. Love you, Pops. But having music, talking about music and artists, Stevie Wonder, and sort of the activism that he included in his and social consciousness, and Marvin Gaye, Nina Simone, like all those things, those musical artists were sort of a part of my influence. And at the same time, there was a period of time where we lived outside of DC, so we'd go into DC and go to the Smithsonian, right? And they had, the Air and Space Museum, but they had all these art museums that were free to go to. So we'd go and just sort of walk down and be like, not really understanding what I was being exposed to then. Sure. But then eventually going like, oh, that was some dope shit. Like, and seeing sort of understanding the differences in time periods and nuances in brush strokes and those little things about art that ended up influencing my eye on society and be able to notice sort of more intricate things in society as well.
How old were you when you got to that appreciation of what he was showing you?
Probably a teenager. Yeah. But I also like, I'm talking about, art to my parents, and eventually my mom was like, oh yeah, when you were a baby, I was a dancer. I was like, whoa, what you mean? She was like, no, I used to do African dance. I was like, huh? So yeah, we used to have you at the rehearsals, and the African drummers, da da da. I was like, what are you talking? Yeah. So obviously because I wasn't really aware of what was going on, but understanding that the arts was always there, right? And then I think about the poetry thing. I was doing the arts admin thing behind the scenes, helping poets do open mics and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But there was a time where I wrote a thing or two, right? And, I won a couple poetry slams here and there, right? But then I had a cousin who was doing poetry at the same time. I was like, yo, we had linked in New York one time. He's like, yo, so like, what you spitting now? So I remember us just walking down the street. So I spit my piece, yada, 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 yada. Then he was like, so yo, this is kind of the piece, people are kind of digging right now, whatever. He's like,
Oh yeah.
Saul Williams.
Yeah, he killed the game.
Like, does this piece where he like, we'll find a clip and put it in there because that shit is crazy. But that kind of stopped me from doing poetry.
Wait, I have known you for 20 plus years. I never knew you won poetry slams. You've never shared. Are you serious?
Yo.
You have never shared that with me, brother.
Look, at Winston-Salem State, struggling college student, if there was a poetry slam, I was going to get that money.
Wow.
It was like only a couple cats could really rock with me. So I was like, I knew that I was guaranteed money. So I didn't go get me some ramen noodles or whatever.
Saul, you messed up Wade's poetry game.
Hey, I went to Howard University and on a scholarship, and we would recite poetry on the speech team. And so that's how, from my sophomore year on, we would be out doing poetry and prose and competing out on the yard. So just reminding me, you said, get that money. There is, money in it too for people who are listening and thinking, oh, okay, some poetry. It is out there. I mean, you have to be very strategic about it. But people
She lying. Ain't no money in poetry.
Go to those schools on those speech teams. You know what I love is that your father, growing up, you told me there was never a space you lived in that didn't have a photography studio inside of it. Whether it was a house, whether it was an apartment, always made the space.
My dad always made space for photography. So that was something that was just instilled in me early on. Photography, my name is Cam, it's my real name. So
it's not short for Cameron.
What is,
okay.
Still
but that's like, was that intentional?
He would say it's not, but I would say like how did somewhere in your mind,
right.
It makes sense, right? So my dad, and when he did photography though, he did it from a very traditional, professional way. Like my dad would be the one that shoot your wedding or a prom or set up the backdrop outside or whatever.
Right.
So when he did it, I wouldn't say it wasn't creative, because I'm not going to say it's not creative. It's still a lot of creativity involved.
Yeah.
But it was much more like suit, tie, professional. You show up on time, you do your thing, and then you kind of transfer the photos. It wasn't like you were trying to put them in awards or art galleries or things of that nature. It was really kind of service-based also, just like make money off of it.
Right.
So I never really took a liking to it. It was doing chores for me. I hated it. I hated the concept of it, so I never was connected to it.
Wow.
So art to me, growing up, as I'm thinking about hearing you guys talk about it, I didn't grow up in a traditional or anything untraditional. I guess it would be where somebody did music in my family or poetry or anything like that. As I think about where my creativity started, it really started a lot in video games, and just the ability to customize things in video games. That was kind of my generation. So creating players in Madden or creating players in NBA Live and how you want them to look and how you want them to play. It's that's kind of where it first started. And then I used to play video games all day and night. So then video games translated to this game called The Sims. And in The Sims, you can create your whole life, worlds, and you can build buildings and houses. And when you really think back, you're really being extremely creative, because it's how you design the house, where you want to put the door, where you make your kitchen, where you make this, where he works at, what job they take. It's very customizable, and it's really drawing in a certain sense, but just through this form of technology. And that's where a lot of it came. And then that expands to other video games and things of that nature. Then that translates to every day and the way you dress and fashion, the way you present yourself. So I never really looked at it like I was doing art or a part of art, but as you look back, it all is the stepping stones for visual identity and visual connections, and things that I reference now in my work can come back from things that I saw in a game or some form of culture. So it's interesting to think like that, because I didn't grow up where it was like just being taught to me like arts or it's important arts. Like my dad being a photographer didn't
click is like that's
rock
being an art.
with
That
me
was
being a
business.
photographer. He did not rock with me doing it. Like that was not something that he was like, do that, son. It was like, no, I sent you to Morehouse to go do something else, like be a doctor, lawyer, something else. So I think that one of the things that I see a lot though, and a big motivator for the way I present myself is even our parents have to see someone young like me having success in the arts. Like, you know, like it's important that more people are black and can say, what do you do for a living? I'm a photographer. And leave it at that. Not a hobby, I do this.
Right.
And I make money. You know, and I do things like, and that is actually some of the motivator by some of the ways I present myself, because I'm a much more very reserved, low-key individual. You give me a free shirt, I'll put the shirt on. You know, that's like my energy more than it is me going and buying Louis and Gucci, da-da-da.
Right.
But as I've reached a certain level of success, I've had to learn, like, for me to actually inspire the next generation, there are some phases where you do have to, what Kendra say, pop out and show. You know what I mean? You have to do that. And there's been certain times where even in my career where I felt like, all right, I have to get a Rolex. It's just important that they see it.
You know what I mean? Because no matter what you're wearing,
yeah, they have to
they gonna see.
You know what I mean? And it's not even for myself; it's for the next gen to be like, wow.
So you're really speaking their language.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah,
I can get that by being
I can get that by being like, yes, you can do that. Like,
and you're right.
possible.
It is good for parents to see, because you might grow up in an art space, but they're not saying, hope you become no offense, hope you become an actor. Okay, so you're gonna be an actor. What are you gonna do to get food?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's just one of those things where
all of that.
Yeah,
they don't know it, and it's not even their fault. They've never seen it. Like they don't know somebody that say they did that, and that's what they made a career out of. So, and that's how, especially in photography, it's even worse. We're behind the scenes individuals that don't really get that love at all. So, a part of that motivator of how I present myself is like, I got to inspire two sets of generations, and even my own generation. To know, like, yo, if your kid comes to you and wants to do photography, it's not a bad thing. Like, that's a real job. Like, it's not like get a real job. That's a job. Now, here are the things they got to learn on how to do it and maximize it, but they can do that.
Right.
So that's really important, because nothing discourages creativity more than your parents, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think it's hard for parents for any kind of. It's hard for parents to see any kind of creative endeavor for their kid to be successful.
Yeah,
because they don't equate creative with business,
and also I think the artistic,
they see that as sort of oxymoronic.
But I think even artists see that as well. I think artists get so locked into the art of it that they don't think so much about the business side. Whereas now we're talking about being a technologist, right? The way the business is now, you can't go in just being an artist. But I think traditionally, artists are not the best business people.
Yep.
Right.
So when you're a parent and you have like my mother wanted to play violin, and her dad said, you can't make no money playing violin. And I think as parents, when we think about our kids wanting to be an actor or wanting to be a dancer, or even if it is photography, or you want to be a painter, a visual artist, the first thing the parent goes, you're not going to make any money doing that. So there's probably a shift that parents need to make in terms of, as we were talking about in one of the other podcasts about when we're talking about code switching.
Yes.
And how that's so based upon going through the traditional route of, you go to school, so you go to good junior high school, to go to good high school, to go to good college, to get a good job. Yeah, then get a good job, and then go out and to be a worker. Mm-hmm. So I think it feeds into I think everyone, from parents and even kids, seeing the arts as, unfortunately, more than just the arts. But if it's something you want to do as a living, you also have to look at the business side of it as well.
So I just wrote down the ideas of success, right?
Okay.
Like just sort of clarifying in the youth's mind and in the adult's mind, like redefining our ideas of success. What is success, right? Mm-hmm. Is it financial stability?
Right.
Is it financial excess?
Right.
You know,
Right.
So just sort of those things will help sort of define and guide our youth and our communities
and our adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
and I
know?
think even on that level, people need to know that there's not one form of what success
Right.
is.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a personal decision on how you define it.
But we've been conditioned
Yeah.
to
Our conditioning's been
what-
conditioned. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, nah, that's facts. we've been told that, millionaire this, and then we don't even realize, like, was it 1% of the world will become a millionaire ever?
Right.
It's like
right.
Because you
Such
hear
a-
it all the time. Like
it's such an
millionaires so-and-so.
unrealistic thing, but we're told that that's a measurement of success, and then that discourages so much business or work because people won't even try because it's like it seems so far fetched.
Right.
And the way that they do it, and even to the point of like parents and stuff. Like when I mentor like younger photographers now, they all go through it. Like you find an 18-year-old photographer, you ask them if their parent supports their career, they probably would tell you, like, not really. Da, 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 da. I've seen some of them get kicked out of their houses for doing it. I've seen all that. And what I try to tell them, because it took me a while to understand my dad's tough love on it, what I had to realize is it's like the highest form of love. He cares so much that he's ready to fight me over doing something like this. Like
Right.
he's ready to put a strain on our relationship to ensure I don't mess up. Like, and I had to really go
Yeah.
back and think about it. I'm like,
Like, he's not doing it because he
not
hates
doing it-
what you're
he's not
doing.
hating on you.
He's doing it because he
actually
loves you.
Like they really love you. That's why they're telling you that.
Like, bro, I want you to be able to eat.
Yeah, in order to defeat that, you don't defeat that with combative, negative energy like I probably was back then. Like, man, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. No, understand where their concerns are and attack their concerns. So if
With a
he's-
plan.
Yeah, with a plan. If he's concerned about how I'm gonna make money. Talk to him about the money you made. You know what I mean? Stop asking him for money. Stop
there you go.
depending on them.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
straight, make your independence. Set your goals to that. Like, let me get independent of him first, and then now he can't bring money up because, Dad, have I asked you for money?
Right.
All right, let's take money off the table. Then. Now what's next? Like, you want to see that? Okay, have I asked you for
Yeah.
that? So then, with my dad, I had to start like learning. Like, okay, he's motivated by stability. My dad's in the military and worked at the government. He wants to know that you're going to be on stable ground, son.
Right.
With
So then-
insurance,
yeah,
by the
with
way.
insurance,
You get
all
that?
that, you gonna get all your
I get the
benefits.
insurance.
Good.
It has insurance?
Yeah,
Oh, right.
all
Yep.
that. So I had to start attacking that. You know what I mean? Like, all right, bet. So then I started to tell him how much money I was making. I started to be more like, and I'm never that person, but I had to be that to him. Like,
Right.
hey, Dad, they just paid me XYZ for the shoot. What? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I did. I can do that. And then he's like my
Could you do that?
Yeah,
I
he's
did
like my
that.
biggest fan. He's my biggest fan, and
You know what I
His
find
support.
That's dope.
these days sometimes is that you on the opposite side, you will find, I see a lot of young people, they get online and they say, you know what? They see people on Instagram and then the entrepreneurship really starts bubbling because they see people making money. But I don't see them often wanting to put in that work that we're all talking about, the business, because they see the end result. Wow, that person makes 6 figures every month and they just post. Yeah, they just post, but there's a whole lot behind it. They wrote the skit, they edited the skit, they figured out algorithms, they did a whole bunch. But I find that I meet a lot of young entrepreneurs who are online and think that social media really is the way for a lot of stuff to
And-
translate.
They don't put in the work on the business side.
Yeah.
But a lot of them aren't putting in the work artistically either.
True.
You know, that
Yeah.
artistic and creative process.
Because unfortunately, where we are in the business, the talent is not the priority. Unfortunately,
It's the end result of all the accolades and money and people seeing who you are.
yeah, it's like, how do you get at this point? How do you get followers?
Yeah.
Right. How
It
do
ain't
you
about
get
followers, it's the engagement.
But the way, okay,
Yeah, right?
how do you get engagement? But again, those things really come
Right,
before
right.
the talent.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to have a whole lot of talent.
no, you don't. It's clickbait. And
Yeah.
following trends.
I know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, so we talk about, so I think what happens is people start to see they don't necessarily have to put in the work. Like, why put in all this work on this talent when it's really the other things that get me in or get me over?
Right. Yeah.
So that's
I can just keep posting a bunch of mediocre stuff. Something's going.
Yeah.
yeah.
Something's going to catch.
So at
And there are a
some
lot.
point-
And I also want to say there are a lot of people that are putting in the work too.
Well, yeah,
I mean-
but that's why at some point as an artist, as you at 7 years old, you don't make these decisions, right? But as you
Right.
get older and you cross that threshold, am I trying to make a living off of this art? Then yeah, you have to look at, as I said, the business side of it. But then you also have to look at it, are you really trying to be an artist? Because in that case, you have to put both in both baskets. Because you can say, okay, I want to be an artist, but I really want to be back to success, how you see success. Well, I really want to be rich and famous.
Right.
So I'm going to put more of my eggs in this basket and not really cultivate the art because I don't necessarily have to, because my goal is to be rich and famous. Unless, or the other side of it, if you want to be an artist, like I want to be a true artist and I want to make a living at this, then I have to do the extra work in cultivating my art and the business part of it.
Yeah.
That's where we are today, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I'll ask you guys, do you guys think being an artist is synonymous with being an entrepreneur?
No.
I think that's a new way of thinking.
I think that's something that more people have to think about.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to. Just because
Right.
you're a photographer, you don't have to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
There are other outlets, ways for you to stay doing exactly what you want to do. And I think that what trips a lot of talented individuals up is that they assume that they're one and the same, and they might fall short on these 9 other things, but be really talented here. And if they could just focus on their talent, and you just may not be an entrepreneur, it's fine. You go
Right.
up under a system, you'll be great at what you do. Just stick to what you do, you'll be successful. But it's a lot to think about. I got to take on marketing, accounting,
Right.
all these other stuff. And that discourages true talent off the gate because they think that they have to be an entrepreneur, and you don't. And your work can get out there. You can still be creative. It's some of the best photographers in the world. They work for the NBA. They get assignments from the NBA. They go sit courtside and they take photographs. And somebody else handles the rest of what happens
Right.
after that photograph is done. And they're able to get their credit and do whatever they want to do. But they don't have to do what I have to do
Right.
every day. And it's like, so when I meet young people, that's like an early question I ask them. Like, I know you want to be a photographer. That's super dope. You could do that. Do you want to be an entrepreneur? And if you do, then here's a playbook. If you don't, no problem at all. Here's the other playbook of how you go do that.
Yeah.
And you just perfect that craft, bro.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to put you on that payroll and you'll be all right.
Right.
One of the joys of doing this podcast is we tend to start with a topic and the conversation turns into something else.
Yeah.
So the intent was to talk about artistic activism, but I love that we actually got into art and the business side of art and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. But on that note, too, I'm wondering, in terms of how you want to be remembered, in terms of the social activism part of you and how you will be remembered 50 years down the line when someone sees what you're doing, what do you want them to say?
I would say that I changed the photography industry and the creative industry in general. Like, I broke all the rules and broke down all the barriers. Like, he did it in a way that's never been done, and he set a blueprint for, I don't know how many years we're going to have social media, and this is going to be the way that people are consuming art. But he created a new blueprint for how to navigate in this world where, like I said, the art is being consumed 100 times, thousands of times a day. And how do you make money in a space where people are not appreciating the same way? I think it's going to be that. Then I think it's also going to be just the business of arts and creativity. Like, he turned it into a business. Like, I'm really inspired by even like Kevin Hart and things he's done as an actor per se, to how he started and how now that's translating to whatever book of business he's been able to
Right.
create. Like, that's cool for other actors or whoever's inspired by him, or comedians that start like that, to see where it can go. And I think that I have the ability to do the same thing as it relates to like photography. It's like you can start off being a photographer, but you don't have to stay in that box.
You end up having your own burger joint
Whatever
You can
wanna
end
do,
up being a business man.
you can.
and a
While
business
preserving history, too.
man.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, brother.
And I
Good
appreciate
stuff,
y'all for
man.
having
That
me.
was dope.
Good show. Love.
Cam Kirk Studios.